Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shannon Coleman, an associate professor and state extension specialist at Iowa State University. In today's presentation, we'll focus on the essential forms you have to submit with your USDA proposals. So we have data management plan, facilities, equipment, resources, and mentor plan. So, um, this boot camp series is in collaboration with Texas Tech University, Alabama A&M University, and Iowa State University. We were awarded a USDA Food Safety Outreach Technical Assistance Program grant, and the audience that we are targeting for this funding is minority serving institutions, and then institutions collaborating with those minority serving institutions. Listed here on the slide is our team. We have our principal investigator, Dr. Angela Shaw from Texas Tech University, and then our co-PIs, Dr. Armitra Jackson Davis from Alabama A&M University, and Dr. Christine Strom from Engineering Science editors. And then we have myself, Shannon Coleman. So they're going to black out their screens to help with our streaming purposes because I'm going to go straight into our agenda. So in today's presentation, I'll provide you information about the following topics, and we'll begin with talking about the importance of some of these forms and attachments that you submit to the USDA. And then today I will also specifically highlight some very important forms that are important to this topic, and that is your data management plan, your facilities and other resources, equipment and resources, and your mentor plan. So first, let's start off talking about your forms and attachments. Grant forms contain copies of federal forms that are currently being used by the awarded agency to create grant applications and grants.gov. These forms are used as a part of the pre and post award reporting. And so that include government-wide and agency-specific forms. There are some forms that are standard forms. So standard forms 424, SF 424, families that form families that represent the government-wide data set or forms that the grant that goes with the grant application in partnership with the federal government making agency and the applicant's community. These forms are discussed in this series. They are part of a form repository, and these forms are part of your form family or your post-award reporting forms setup. So the forms that are listed on grants.gov are the facilities and other resources. Another form that can be found on that website is the research related other project forms, which is your data management plan. And then there's some supplemental forms. So you won't find these on grants.gov. These are just some that really at your organization, they may have some templates. If not, we're going to provide you with some templates about them, which is the equipment and resources form. And then a new form that's for Hispanic serving institution. And I was learning about it myself when I was given this topic, which is the mentor plan. So as we've been saying in this series is that to prepare for these government form and documents or to prepare for this whole process, you want to start doing some work ahead of time. These documents are essential that will be used during your proposal review to assure reviewers know that your organization can fulfill the need of the work. So it's essential that you have these kind of start working on filling these out ahead of time. Maybe even using like our writing group or something like that to just start working on some of these essential forms so that they're ready way before your RFA comes out. Because for the most part, depending on your projects, there could be some edits that can be done, but for the most part, a lot of these things won't change as much. So big thing, do not wait to the last minute to prepare them because they will drive you completely crazy. Um, it is a good practice to, you can either ask your grant office, ask colleagues. When I was getting started, I would ask my colleagues, hey, do you have this? Can I see it? Can I see how it's supposed to look? So that you can kind of figure out how you would want to fill these out. So you want to start working on them as a part of this boot camp or even as a part of our work group. So we're starting off with the first example. The data management plan is a document that outlines how you plan to manage your data generated by the funded project. And then also the plans for after the project has completed. It includes details on how the data will be produced, acquired, managed, stored, and protected. The project director has to submit this plan. There is a page limit to this form. There's a 2-page limit. So you want to make sure that you're clear and concise with how your data is going to be managed. So on the right side of this slide, you see some components that are essential for a data management plan. And so I have them listed there, but I have some descriptions that I'm going to talk about under each of them. So expected data type. So describe the type of data, whether it's digital, non-digital, how you will generate it, whether it'll be your primary or metadata. So examples of this include your lab work, field work, surveys. For extension, this includes outreach materials, number of stakeholders reached, number of activities, and assessment questionnaires. The next component could be data format, and is exclusive for accessibility of scientific data. And so you're using this looking at your appropriate community and recognition of standards. And you're also looking at machine readable format and whether it exists. So if this data will be managed by a domain or a specific workplace or submitted to a public database, please indicate that and put that in your format and follow. The data must contain enough information to allow you to have independent use and of understanding and validation and data analysis. The next one is data storage and preservation. So you want to provide information about whether your data will be stored in a safe environment, whether it has adequate measurements, and whether there's long-term preservation. So you want to outline and describe how you're planning to store it, preserve the data during and after the project, and specify if there's a data repository and if it exists. If you're using a database or a data repository for long-term preservation, that may be used for data sharing and public access. You want to provide an estimate of how long the data will be preserved and state the plan for a retention period. So you also want to include tools and contingency plans that will be used to avoid data loss, degradation, or damage. And then the final component of a data plan is data sharing, protection, and public access. So you want to describe your data access and sharing procedures during and after the grant. You want to outline specific repositories or a catalog if that's the process you're going to use. And then you want to have an important statement to include whether your protection and the confidentiality of personal privacy information, proprietary interests, business confidential information, and intellectual property right. You want to outline restrictions such as copyright, confidentiality, and patent and appropriate credit, disclaimers, and conditions to use for the data by other parties. So that is the first part of data management. And so we got some more information about data management in the next slide. So in this one, we're talking about roles and responsibility because that's important to also outline. You want to state who will ensure that data management plan. This is important for those multi-investigators, multi-institution, multi-state type projects. Who's the person that's going to maintain and protect the data that you're collecting? So you want to have also a contingency plan in case a personnel leaves the project. You also want to know what resources will be needed for the data management plan. Um, if funds are needed for this process, you want to make sure that you're putting it in your budget request and in your narrative. If your project budget must have sufficient resources to develop, implement, and propose for that proposed data management plan. For your data management tools, there are some websites that can help you. There's a data management tool website that can help you generate your proposal as far as getting ready for that process. So some common concerns that have come up when we talk about data management plans is if there's no data, you need to place in your document that no data will be produced. The second is data management plan. It does not count towards your narrative page limit. So this is a separate document from your narrative for your project. And then you want to make sure that consider one of your scientific merits and criteria for review. All right, so this is wrapping up data management plan. We'll have some additional resources, some of the handouts and websites that I looked at in making up this presentation. The next is facilities and other resource documents. So with this document, they want to look at assess the capability of your organizational resources available for you to perform the proposed effort. You want to identify facilities that can be used, such as laboratory, animal laboratories, computers, office space, clinical lab, and others. You also want to describe only resources that are directly capable of your proposed work. So in this document, you want to highlight the capacities, the pertinent capabilities, the relative proximity, and you also want to extend the availability and the extent of the availability of these facilities for this project. So I would suggest getting a letter of support from the person who owns it. So I would give the example here. At Iowa State, we have a pilot plant and they have different processing equipment in there. And so I would suggest to you to get a letter from the pilot plant owner or the faculty member that manage it to say, I've given permission for this person to use that space. And so that could also be in your form that I'm going to use this facility. I also have a letter of support in your other resources that help you that states that I have access to use this facility. And so in this document, you want to describe your facility's capabilities in detail. As a previous grant reviewer, it is important for us to say, if they're going to use this specific piece of equipment, we would always look for what details for us can they tell from the proposal about whether they really have access to this or whether, to confirm that they have access to this to complete the work. All right, next is equipment and resources. And this one is similar to the facilities because within that pilot plant facilities, I use the example of there's specific equipment in there. And so this plan outlines the specialized equipment your organization has to complete the proposed project. It's a great tool to show reviewers that you have the resources and you are collaborating with the correct organization for your project. So this is broad as far as we jump to, for me, I jumped to processing equipment, but this also relates to lab equipment, podcasting for us who are in extension. Video production is another one that it could be used for. This plan is not only limited to lab equipment, and I say that because with my outreach projects, I do videos, and so I had to talk about the facilities that we had to be able to do the work that we needed to do. There are opportunities for outreach, as I said before, to talk about different specialized equipment that could be used for your projects. Another example is if someone wants to start a podcast about a specific topic. Does your university have a podcast space? There is one here at Iowa State. Or do you have the mics? If you want to record yourself, do you have cameras? Or anything like that that can help you produce this podcast that you want to do. This may also be a good space if you're using some of the funding to buy specialized equipment, maybe even describing that equipment a little bit more in detail, especially if you don't have that space in your narrative. All right, and then the next document and final document that I'll be talking about is the new document that I didn't know about. It is for Hispanic Serving Institution Education Grant Program, and it is called the Mentor Plan. I found it in an RFA for fiscal year 2024 for their RFA. And so this talks about the peer process, and they talk about that they want you to have it as a peer, layered, or similar mentoring program process. And so it's required that you have forms for mentoring, so peer or similar mentoring activities. You want to have various levels of scholars, and the mentor plan must address mentoring, how the mentor be different for different and targeted specific education levels. The activities should be better positioned in the institution, and it involves to engage in its role as such as with the HSI. You want to include your outreach to your current and potential underrepresented student populations. So the application must describe how funds will be allocated in your budget narrative, and then your projects with budgets requests must requests exceeding the budgetary guidelines will not be reviewed. But this is something new for this grant program, and having detailed outlines of how you plan to do that mentoring process will be great for reviewers to have a insight on how you want to move forward with your plan for your funding. So as far as the summary of this presentation, as I said before, and those who are going to join us on Monday, I'm going to say it again. Start early. And you can look at previous RFAs to kind of see some of those forms. I will feel bad if you look at it and then they say, ooh, we're going to take that form away. But I can tell you, depending on the type of grant, some of these forms, such as data management plan, equipment came up when it came up with SOP, because especially with my SOP, we had to use video production. So I had to do an equipment plan for that. So you want to contact your university grant office for templates and support if you have that type of support. If not, that is why this group was organized, looking at our website as well for some of these resources and some of these templates that may be out there. And then once the big thing that helped me with my career is once it's written, then all you have to do is update it. The part that I got frustrated with is I kept meeting people. And so when we start talking about your conflict of interest form on Monday, we'll talk about how that kind of held me up as far as I got to add new people to my list. All right, so for your moving on to the programming that we'll have moving forward for our website, here is our website. You can use your phones to or iPads to pull down that QR code to visit our webinars on demand. And then for our past ones, they've all been recorded so that you can go and watch them and view them. And for those who may have missed them. And then for these general webinars, we've gone through week number 1. I'm so proud of us. We made it to the end. And on Monday, you will hear from me again. I'll talk about current and pending, conflict of interest, biosketch, and statement of work. Some what I call them are my USDA forms. That's when you're ever in a proposal a group with me, I always call that folder my USDA forms. And don't forget to sign up for our summer writing group. This week, we've been challenged with figuring out who's going to be at which writing group. So you'll get to sit down and meet some of us one-on-one, and we'll be sitting and writing with y'all, writing along with y'all, and also being your accountability partner during that process. And thank you. If you have any questions, it can be directed to our PI, Dr. Angela Shaw, and you can use that QR code to get in contact with her, or use that email address listed on the slide.
Well, thank you, Shannon. I do want to take a moment, and what we've been doing is a lot of examples. So I'm going to share my screen just for a second, and I'm
Okay.
going to show the examples from this grant that we're currently in right now, to show the group what an example of some of these forms look like. I'm a visual person, so it kind of helps a little bit. So this is the form that is for facilities and resources that we did. And it was for each university. We highlighted what our office space, what our grant support space looks like, because that was the focus of our grant opportunity. And so we go through and we try and keep the same uniform facilities, and highlight all the things that would come into place when it comes to the grant. So although we like to have just keep one set, it has to be specific to the call. I'm going to give another example, and that is, I'm going to pull up right now, and it is our data management plan. So the data management plan, as Dr. Coleman just mentioned, it has those big headers. And so for us, in this grant, we had written materials, we have Excel sheets, we have curriculum materials, digital images, as well as we have a storage type that we're using through Texas Tech University. So we outlined who's doing what and the data format and standards. Once again, all the universities, who's collecting, because we're doing Qualtrics surveys, we're outlining the type of data we are going to be collecting it, and in what format we're going to be collecting it, how we're doing statistical analysis in it, storage facilities again, how we're going to store and preserve it, how long we're going to keep it, how is it going to be safe, from cybersecurity standpoint is all highlighted in there. We also talked about the data sharing and public access. So we are under a human subject approval for this grant. So we highlight that we're going to have data coming in for that that's going to be protected, and we're going to be doing journal articles. We also have roles and responsibility, who's doing what in the process, and how we're going to monitor it. So it's less than the 2 pages limit, but it's there to help support. Now, also, I want to give another example, and this is going to pop up, and this is equipment. Now, because we're talking about all USDA grants, I brought in one that was more of a research-based example. But I wonder if Shannon has handy one of her extension-based examples. But we have included in here all of our equipment that we have in the laboratories highlighted, our facilities highlighted in this document. We have special teaching areas that are going to be using. We have processing areas with equipment that we're going to use. In addition to teaching, learning professionals, we're going to have TV screens, microphones, laptops, as well as we have a media center with all of our cameras and digital support within that we highlight in this. For the equipment and the facilities, there's no page limit to those, so you can do that. So I want to just share briefly that experience. Are there any questions amongst the group that I could facilitate for Dr. Coleman?
And I can show really quickly the equipment one. Our original plan was to use the Brinton Center for Technology and Agricultural Instruction and Technology Transfer. When we received funding, Brinton Center went away and we had ISU online. Also, my group decided to go from live videos to animated videos, so we had to go look for a different group. But from our original plan, we talked about the Brinton Center and their some quotes about them and that they had video equipment, that they had produced HD quality audio and videos and field videos and classroom that include accessibility with closed captioning. So I had to include in that resource actual examples of what their capabilities were. And then also, as I said before, I also received a letter of support from them to say that they were willing to work with me.
Wonderful. While we wait for questions to come in through the chat box or the question and answer option, I have a few questions for you.
Mhm.
The first one would be, what has been your biggest challenge when getting all these forms and working with people?
For me, the first couple of years, like at the webinar that I'm going to give on Monday, those papers, those forms are perfect. Are they done? Then I've been working on them for years. In the past couple of years, I've had to start doing the data management form and the equipment. And so it was like, where do I get this information from? Who do I access? So learning where do I get that information from, or talking to other colleagues or even talking to the Brennan Center. Can you give me a brief description of what y'all do and how y'all do it so I can put it in here? So I thought I had all my forms put together and I found out that I did not. So
Well, that's very good advice. Utilizing your colleagues, but also utilizing who you're going to be working with. And
mhm,
so, one thing that's going to be highlighted over and over again is with your research plan and really understanding what data you're bringing in, what equipment you're going to need to make this project successful, and what facilities you're going to need to make this successful. And that's all in that planning stage, so that you know who's going to. And then if you have subcontractors, then you need to make sure that you get all this information from each of them so you can
mhm.
have a holistic data document to submit. So that's very great advice. Another one is, what are some of the lessons learned through both successes and not successes with these forms?
As I said at the end of my presentation, once you write them, you're done. So, or you just have to update it. So now you have a template that you can move forward from there. And so, as we'll talk about different forms on Monday, if I go back and look at my forms that I started with and how they look now, they're going to look totally different. And because I've learned more, I'm big at I'm a visual learner as well, Angela. And so looking at some of my other colleagues and I go, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And so I would go back and reformat mine so that it can look like that and align with the others.
Well, that's a great point. Like these are work in progress, but always USDA is one of those organizations that the formats do say it's very similar. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when you go into NSF and
Yeah.
NIH, those forms change usually by the year, even the half year. I'm currently working on an NSF form or grant right now, and the forms are only good till May the 17th. And then
Yeah.
after May 17th, you have to do another format of those ones. But USDA usually stays very solid with their formatting. So once you have one or two, you just copy and paste. But you have to make sure that you're copying and pasting appropriately. And
Yeah, and then
they have
going
to be
over to
specific.
the NSF ones, I was like, oh, so it's like this one for USDA, but then the information may be a little bit different. So yeah, and when you said they change every year, we submitted a grant one year and then we resubmitted it the next year. And I said, I did that already. And my colleagues were like, they changed it. So yeah, paying close attention to those, but at least you have something to start from. Me starting from scratch when I first started as a assistant professor, it was hard. But now I just go, oh yeah, those forms, I got it. I can get that done. That's easier. Sometimes I try to avoid my narrative and work on those instead.
Well, once again, as we wait to see if there's additional questions, that's where the summer accountability group comes in.
Hmm.
We have 10 sessions that you will get information on that will be coming forward. And you could spend one of those sessions just on these forms, just starting to fill out all these forms and having a template, sending them over to us to give you feedback on maybe how you could be more specific or add things in based on your objectives. That's why we are here.
Here's one that just came in.
The question is the font and spacing on the forms the same as the project narrative?
At our university, so I keep trying to count Angela as if she's still here with me. For our grants person, they do kind of flag us on making sure that we kind of keep them the same. You know, she said you want to keep it uniform, and that's why you saw at the top of mines there was like you could see my name at the top and stuff. And so those were some of the key formatting things that I had to follow with the we have grant specialists that kind of work with us in our department on those, and they kind of review it and give us feedback. And to give example, when Angela switched over to Texas Tech, her grant specialist said, Shannon, we're gonna talk about me and my bio sketch and how it needed help on Monday. And so Angela didn't have to do the communicating with us. Her grant specialist um, reached out to me and was like, Shannon, you have to do this, this, and this. So having that help usually helped us. And I think that's our privilege that we sit in. But OCD Shannon would probably say, yeah, keep them about the same so that they can match up.
But more than anything, it's important within the RFP to understand how much space they allow. So things like data management plan have very concrete 2-page limits, but a lot of them don't have font and spacing requirements with them. But they will tell you you're required to have these key titles included, or this information has to be included. Some don't have page limits. Some do have page limits. Some have fonts, some have spacing. So really reading your RFP and making sure that it tells you what the expectation is. And if it doesn't tell you specifically, then you have as much page. But one other form that we won't put in, but response to reviewers is always 1 page. And it's not included in your page total. But that 1 page you have to, if they give you, typically they'll give you like 10 to 12 pages worth of comments, and you have to comment on all of those in just 1 page on how you've improved and all of that. So, but Dr. Coleman will be talking about that rejection as well. So Christine has her hand raised. Go ahead, Christine.
Well, I just wanted to point out whenever there is a page restriction, I would strictly adhere to the font size that is mandatory for the narrative. Because the expectation is that everybody uses the same font, the same spacing to make this fair and comparable. When there is no restriction whatsoever, you can use whatever you want, but in order to make it look coherent, I would stick to the same font size, same spacing.
Thank you, grant writer extraordinaire. She's our guru. Any other questions? I'm going to stop the recording.